everybody, this is Mr. Michael Sweet from Striper, and you are listening to Beats and Eats.
Live from the virtual lounge in cyberspace, it's Beats and Eats. A happy hour for the mind, featuring the best in conversation and pop culture. Food, music, movies, comedy, you name it. And you'll never know who will be dropping by to pay us a visit. And now, here are your hosts, Ty and Nick Gelso.
The virtual lounge is open. It's another edition of Beats and Eats. Ty, Nick Gelso. We are going back in time to the 1970s, early 80s. Very special guest today. Ralph Mouth. We all knew him as that. Donny Most, but now Don Most. And he's got a very, very big-time singing career going on right now, Nick. And he's going to talk about it right here in the virtual lounge.
Excited. We've had Potsy on. We had Anson Williams on.
Yep.
We found out he's doing really well and is very successful. It's great to see Don on too, coming on into the virtual lounge, especially since his music tie, from what I understand, is kind of very much in the same vein as the Beats and Eats music. Very jazz, swing, big bands.
I think Rat Pack. It's my favorite, Nick. It's what you played kind of at your restaurant, isn't it?
Yep, that is. It sure is. Yep, and we would play the obscure songs, the songs that people were like, "Oh, the Rat Pack sang that." Oh yeah, so because that was the kind of stuff in restaurants that gets people talking. So yeah, I love that music, love it. I got to tell you a quick story. When I was when I had the restaurant, my bartender, as you know, he was with the band Cinch, so they were pretty well known.
Right.
So Michael Buble was coming to the area to play at the Mohegan Sun Arena here in Scranton, and he ended up the night before at a local nightclub where they had live music. And the owner called me and said, "Hey, you got to come up. Michael Buble is there." So we went up. He's super short, tight. He's shorter than you. He's about as tall as me and you. And but anyway, my bartender came with me. He ends up getting on stage and singing an entire set with Michael Buble. It was incredible.
Michael Buble, love him. I had everything until all my CDs got ripped off. Now, fortunately, I saved some of it on iTunes, but somebody broke it in. No, that's a true story.
Do you still use CDs?
Well, I had downloaded a majority of them, right, to iTunes, but on a Super Bowl Sunday, right, everybody's glued to the television set. A couple years ago, I walk into my storage unit and all of my CDs for like 25 years have been stolen. I mean, stuff that's priceless that you can't even get printed again. Michael Buble was among those. But nonetheless, good thing things are downloaded on iTunes and saved there forever on the computer. But I loved Michael Buble. I loved Tony Bennett. He's still around. He's doing great things still. And Don's album, is, we'll call him Don because that's what he goes by now, is mostly swinging. And I've heard it. I've sampled it. I've seen the clips online. Folks, if you love the standards, the jazz standards, you've got to check out Don Most. And I'm not just saying that, Nick, because he's on the show. It really is great stuff.
It is good stuff. It's. I don't want to say it's surprisingly good because that sounds insulting.
Right.
But I just didn't know. I knew he was talented in the music field, but I didn't know quite how talented.
Yeah, and it's funny. It's funny, and I'm going to ask him this when we get him into the virtual lounge. But on the show, Nick, it seemed like everybody on Happy Days had a crack at the microphone, right? You had, Anson Williams was the singer. I think Ron Howard even sang. Fonzie, for crying out loud, who couldn't sing to save his life. Actually, had Henry Winkler had an episode where he sang. And if you think about it, then Joni Loves Chachi, right? They had a band.
Right. They sang.
They sang.
Right. That was very in then.
It was.
As long as, it would have been great if Jack Tripper sang. How
John Ritter. Maybe if I do some digging, I bet we can find John Ritter singing. Yeah, somewhere.
Sure.
So it's funny you mentioned that.
It would have to be John Ritter as Jack Tripper singing. That's what I'm trying to say. How funny would that be?
Oh, it would be a riot, and I will look for that. I'm wondering if it's actually true. Now, having said that, I'm driving around in the car, Nick, the other day, listening, of course, 80s on 8, right? I listened to the countdown because Alan Hunter's a god to me. And, there's Bruce Willis with Respect Yourself. Oh, my God, he couldn't sing.
Oh, I forgot he sang.
Yes.
The one thing that's really funny is because guys like Bruce Willis embarrassed himself. I think Eddie Murphy was kind of good, but when he did that Michael Jackson thing, it was hilarious.
It was.
But like, oh my goodness, that is funny. Everybody wanted to sing. Patrick Swayze was good. He had a good
She's
voice.
Like the Wind is a great guilty pleasure. I can listen to that over and over.
No one wants to admit it.
It's great. I had the single, and I played it over and over.
You also had the feathered hair, like
I tried anyway. Not quite as big, not quite the body as Patrick Swayze at the time. But Nick, you mentioned Eddie Murphy, right? Party All the Time and Put Your Mouth on Me, which is another song of his. What another song like Put the Booty in Your Butt or something?
Yeah, they were all kind of dirty.
Horrible.
And then he appears in a cloud with Michael Jackson. It is like so creepy.
Oh man, bringing back nightmares here, Nick. And of course, Don Johnson with the all-time cheesiest music video of all time. Once again, another guilty pleasure of mine.
Not a bad song though.
Not a bad song.
Was horrendous.
It's Heartbeat. You have to go check it out. What is he wearing? What is he wearing? You've got Dweezil Zappa, looking like he's,
He was always kind of homoerotic, wasn't he? He was always on the borderline.
With that video, Nick, Paul Schaefer's in that video.
Why does Paul Schaefer appear in the like weird moments, especially back then?
Paul Schaefer is in that video like as a film editor. It's just bad.
I know the song. I never saw the video.
You have to, after we're done with this episode, YouTube Heartbeat by Don Johnson. You're going to text me. Trust me.
Wait a minute. I'm doing it right now. Don. Here it comes. Okay.
What is he wearing? What is Don Johnson wearing here?
I already see. What is he in, like a war outfit or something?
I don't know. Well, he's like making a war. No, it doesn't. He's like making a war movie, or he's like a war correspondent, and then he's like in a nylon jumpsuit.
His wife and daughter is there.
Oh, it's just
and
it's so bad.
It's so
bad. Yeah, it's just so horrible. But nonetheless, I do like the song. I have it on iTunes, Nick.
Oh my goodness, you would. It is not a bad song.
No, it's not a bad song. It's the ultimate in 80s cheese, as I say. Poor Don Most. How are we setting him up here? Talking about these bad 80s celebrities singing.
Here's how we're setting him up. Don Most is not doing this cheesy 80s stuff.
No, he's not
reliving his past. He's doing some really cool jazz, upbeat, fast tempo jazz, big bands type music.
And he also had a Christmas album out, Nick, that I didn't know.
Who did?
Don Most. No, Don Most did.
I know. Who didn't, Ty?
Well, no, he just did, though. No, I'm saying Don just did in December.
Oh!
Yes. He just had his own Christmas album in December is what I'm saying.
I didn't get that, okay.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. We're not, but anyway.
I want to cut that out.
Don actually, I know I can hear you. No, Don actually has talent.
No, he does. He does. There's no question he does.
So let's not waste any time. Let's not talk about bad 80s celebrities recording music. He's going to kill us.
He's going to kill us. He's going to kick our ass the minute he walks in the room.
Yeah, let's bring him into the virtual lounge. Don Most talking about Mostly Swinging.
Don't touch that dial. Nick and Ty will be right back with more Beats and Eats.
Oh, the shining such heat, and he shows them pearly white. Just a jackknife has old Maggie, and he keeps it out of sight.
Hello?
Donny.
Yeah.
Hey, it's Ty Ray and Nick Gelso from
Donnie.
Beats and Eats. How you doing?
I'm good, thanks. How are you?
Good. I meant to call you Don. It's hard not to do, though. It's hard not.
Okay. Either one is fine.
You get it all the time, I'm sure. So How are you doing today? Are you excited? I mean, from everything I read, you're really enthusiastic about what you're doing with the new record.
Yeah, the music. I'm loving the new music thing. It's really not that new for me.
Right.
In that I started out singing before I was acting when I was very young. I was singing in the Catskill Mountains, upstate New York, and when I was 14, 15 years old. So it's been very, I got into acting right after that summer. I really started refocusing on acting, and I knew I'd get back to the music one of these days, and I think it was just a timing thing with, I don't know why I waited this long, other than that, the style of music that I'm doing and that I always loved, which is the jazz standards and the Great American Songbook and all that. It wasn't really in favor and very commercial in the 70s and 80s. It was kind of looked upon as passé, but it's had such a great resurgence and rebirth, so to speak. And so the timing was good to do it now,
Why do you think that is? Why do you think the music is so timeless, those standards?
Well, I often say in my act, I go, they're standards for a reason. They stand the test of time.
Yeah.
I mean, these were songs that were so inventive and they might be very witty, they might be very funny, they might very sophisticated, and then they would be poignant and tell these wonderful stories and just incredible lyrics. And then the music, it was so catchy and beautiful, whether it be the ballads or some of the more up tempo kind of stuff, which I love them all. And it was just great music. And I don't watch it was a plethora of these wonderful writers back then that could turn these songs out. But an amazing time, and that's why singers today gravitate towards them because they're just so rich and infectious and all of that,
So Ron Don, in those 9 seasons on Happy Days, of course, there was the band, right? Anson Williams did his part. Ron Howard, even Fonzie took to the mic, right? Even Henry Winkler got a shot at the mic. I think that was with Susie Quattro. I can't remember, but
yeah, I think that's right.
yeah, going way back. But my point is, here you're really the singer, right? Of course, Anson had his shot too. He had a record, as I believe, in the late 70s. But you never got your shot at fame in front of the microphone, did you, on the show?
Well, I they let me at times, but it was mainly, Anson had gone to Gary Marshall early on, very early in the first season, and said, lobbied to let us form a band, and that he was a singer because he had a background in musical theater, and he said you're doing a show about the 50s, and you got the outfits and and the cars and the driving. You need the music, and we could do a thing at Arnold's and play. So Gary, he said, okay, let's try it out, and as a funny story that Anson tells about that in his book called Singing to a Bulldog, and there's a chapter where he talks about going to Gary, and Gary came up with a very funny response, and I'll let people read it in the book, but he gave him a condition of how he would let him try out the singing, and it has to do with a bulldog. So it turned out, it worked out well, and they started doing more of it, and then I saw that they were doing all this music, and I had that in my background, so I made a meeting, set up a meeting with Gary, and lobbied very hard for, pleaded my case why I should get to sing too sometimes in the band. But Gary was very adamant. He had a very, he felt like he had established Potsy as the singer. And he said to me, if I was putting together an act and I needed a juggler, I wouldn't need two jugglers, he said. So he kind of shot me down, and he didn't want to mess with that, the kind of characters, how they'd been evolving. So it was a little frustrating that I didn't get to, there was 1 or 2 episodes where I did get to sing a little, but for the most part, I didn't. But I was so caught up in the show and making the part as good as it could be and working with everybody. So it was a little frustrating, but it wasn't. And especially that I do like a lot of the music from that era, but it wasn't the music that I truly love. The 50s kind of rock and roll was not my wheelhouse. I loved the stuff that Sinatra did and Bobby Darin and Nat King Cole,
right,
and great jazz singers like Ella Fitzgerald, all of that stuff. So that's what I'm doing now, and I put together an act like 3.5 years ago, and the response was right from the get-go was just fabulous, and people were just really great and encouraging me to do more and to record, and that's what got me in the studio, and I'm really excited about the CD that I did called Mostly Swinging, and it swings. It really does. It's great group of musicians. Some top LA jazz guys and wonderful arranger producer that knew how to write those arrangements. We worked hard on that. I love good arrangements, and we spend a lot of time making sure they were just right, and they're fabulous. And so it's a swinging album. It really is.
And you've been.
Is it available? Is it available streaming?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure. I know you can download it on iTunes, and it's definitely on iTunes, and it's on Amazon. You can get the CD itself, and I'm sure there's some other. I think it's on Spotify and all that too.
So what's encouraging about that too is that you're reaching so many different people with such variety of you're getting in front of so many different people by the search ability of iTunes and and younger people are learning more about jazz, and they're getting more sophisticated in their listening styles. Millennials it's not so hip hop heavy as it was and I think that's due to the libraries such as iTunes and Google Music, and it bodes wonderfully for you. I mean, plus you have such a great voice, man.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, I love the fact that I'm hearing more and more about a lot of younger people that are discovering this kind of music and really loving it, and that's exciting to me. I remembered one of my early shows. I had some young people there, and afterwards they came up to me and they were like so excited about the music, and because it was like a discovery for them because they had never really been exposed to it. And being exposed to it in like a cool supper club, where they said I've never been to a place like this. It was like an old school supper club like I used to go to in New York, where you'd have to sit and have dinner and hear these great bands, like playing jazz or singers and all that. So they were so enthusiastic, and I'm excited about exposing it to more and more young people. I hope that continues.
Right, and I was thinking, you guys were talking about music as far as albums and younger people, and I was thinking when Lady Gaga teamed up with Tony Bennett, what a huge hit that was. Remember that?
Right.
Yeah. I mean, that was a big push in that direction. That certainly exposed many people to it that would not have been prior, and I think it really started the change. The reawakening of this music when Tony did it, even way back before that he did something on MTV, and that got him sort of back in the spotlight with younger people.
How about Sinatra with duets? I mean,
that's right. I forgot. Right,
that was huge. And then swing music, swing dancing, really had a resurgence.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, that movie Swingers did a little bit for that. Right. Yeah, the duets albums, and then. And Harry Connick had a lot to do with it, I think, and then Diana Krall,
right?
And when Natalie Cole did that album dedicated to her father, that was a big push in that direction.
Michael Buble,
and now you got Buble, of course. Yeah, so that's why the timing was so much. I said if I'm ever going to do this, go back to the music, this is the time. And I could have done it. I wish I'd done it maybe even 10 years ago, but. Better late than never. There's a reason for the timing, I suppose.
So, Don, you actually had a song on the charts, right, in the late 70s. Is that right?
Yes. I did. It got into top 40, but it was not this kind of music, and it was not the music I really wanted to do. But as I was mentioning earlier, back in the 70s, I had an opportunity. I'd met a producer, and he knew that I had a singing background, and because of the popularity of Happy Days, he felt like he could get me a deal at United Artists label, and he was able to. But they, when I told them the kind of music that I really loved, they were saying, "No, well, you can't do that. We're not going to be able to. We're not going to be able to do that right now." So so then we had to pick out music that was more in the pop and rock vein of that era,
right?
And it was still fun. I mean, I still loved it and had a great time, but it was not what was really in my blood. And I was glad it did pretty well, and it did get into the top 40, one of the songs. Yeah. But it is like night and day from what I'm doing now.
Sure. I think back to then. I look back to then. I think David Soul had albums out. John Travolta, Anson Williams, Gary Coleman would have had an album out if he could have. Right, I'm sure.
And think about like the Partridge Family too, Ty. Right?
Oh, absolutely. David Carradine. Yeah. Sure. No question about
it. Absolutely. Yeah, it's true. So that's what it got kind of lumped into that whole thing. But what I'm doing now is people you could tell that it's authentic. This is not sort of a vanity thing. I mean, this is like I said, it's in my blood, and I did it before I did. It was my first love, so it's so great being able to do it now at this level.
Well, Don, you can certainly hear the passion in your voice, and isn't it great to get behind something you truly love? When the feet hit the floor in the morning, first thing, you're looking forward, right? You're not looking back.
Oh yeah. It was very exhilarating and exciting, and I just get high. It's just incredibly high from this music, and when you're doing it with great musicians and musical directors and producers and all that. I love the collaborative part of it, and then getting in the studio and making sure you can get it as good as you possibly can. That I love that challenge, and I'm going to hopefully do many more. I'm really looking. We're talking about what content-wise what we would do on the next album, and we've got lots of ideas, but. It's a little premature. I want this one to get out there first before I start getting into the next one. But I hope to do it soon. And I'm getting out there doing it live a lot. I'm going to be in Long Island on May 7th at the Patchogue Theater, and then in Philly on May 13th at the Raz Room, a cool jazz room in Philly. So I love doing that kind of stuff. And so we'll see. We just keep going on this journey,
Don, I don't know if anybody ever told you this, but for me, some of my favorite moments of Happy Days were you interacting with your father. Very powerful stuff. Don't think you got enough credit for that. Those scenes were fabulous.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, terrific.
Yeah, I appreciate that very much. I do. So other people have mentioned that to me, that how much it sort of, how effective and impactful it seemed for them. And that was great to hear. Because every once in a while they let me, there was that one scene, one show, I think, where my parents were getting divorced, so it got a little more dramatic, and because they knew that I was wanting to do other things, and I was not really like the character that I played. I was a lot more serious in real life, and I set out to do dramatic work, and my early roles that I got on TV were dramatic, and then when I got Happy Days, I got so associated with the role and that style that it was a little difficult for a while to get acting roles away from that, and it's gotten better and better as the years have gone by, and I've been doing more things, different things, and I'm hoping to do a lot more. I'm feeling so motivated now on the acting side. I did a psychological thriller, a film called Follow, where I played a very different kind of character. It was a psychological thriller. And it sort of revitalized in me my love and passion for doing that again, and doing it in all different kinds of roles. I'm hoping, I think at this point in my life, there'll be more character roles that will be accessible, and I'm really hoping to do a lot.
Yeah, you did a lot. You did a lot earlier in your career. I think you were like in an emergency episode. You really were starting out as a dramatic actor, and of course, actor, and then Happy Days hit and took off. And back then in those times, we had the shows like Fantasy Island and The Love Boat and all those huge ensemble casts. So those really dominated TV back then, didn't they?
Yeah, and you're right. I did an emergency where I played a guy who got into a car accident, became like paralyzed, and then I did a police story back then where I played a sort of a psycho, a bomber, a mad bomber, and
wow.
And then after Happy Days came along, I couldn't even get auditions for those kind of roles anymore. It was like, oh my God.
That must be so frustrating.
It was, it was as great as it was.
Great you were doing, right.
It was, it was so great on so many levels, but frustrating on as an actor who wants to do many, you want to have a career and longevity and be able to do your craft. So it was a challenge, and and to some degree I still fight it. It's gotten better, and I've managed to do many other things, but I feel like I haven't even touched the tip of the surface.
Good for you.
So we'll see. And I've directed a few independent films, and I have several projects right now that trying to get going and getting some interest in. So hoping to do that as well. So I've got a bunch of balls in the air, trying to juggle them. We'll see.
Don, thank you for being so generous with your time. We do appreciate it here on Beats and Eats.
Yeah, the CD is out on Amazon, and or it can be downloaded on iTunes. So those would be the mainstays, I'd say, to find it. And it's really, I'm really proud of it. I think if you listen to this album from the first song, if you have like 35 minutes of uninterrupted time, and you listen to it from the first song all the way to the end, I really think it's a journey. It's a nice musical journey, and the sequencing of the songs, I spent a lot of time making sure that was exactly right, and I think it flows really well. And so I'm encouraging people to do that.
Outstanding.
Awesome.
Thanks, Don. Appreciate your time.
Thanks, Don.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
You bet.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Don Most of Happy Days fame, of course, out with a new album, mostly swinging. And I love this type of... Oh, what a gentleman. And I love this type of music, Nick. I've always loved Michael Buble, and he mentioned Natalie Cole. I'd completely forgotten about that classic album.
Died way too young.
Way too young. Way too young. And you mentioned duets. Yeah. I had duets on cassette, by the way. That's how long ago that was.
And that's funny because... when I had it, it was a CD, and it was the case was so big. Remember how big the cases were for the CD?
Of course, they'd always break. They'd always break too, Nick.
Always break, or you would break them opening them because you'd swear there was gold inside. The way they'd have them tightly security wrapped. But that was a double disc when I got it. It had something else like bonus discs. Remember that? You'd get a second disc for the 4 bonus tracks. So, but it was in that huge clunky case, and but that was great. The first duets was outstanding because Sinatra was actually involved and it was new material. I think the second duets he was not well, and they kind of superimposed his voice in there, and the technology was new at that time. Remember that Natalie Cole thing? That was shocking,
unforgettable. It was with her pop,
with her father, and the video was just so touching, wasn't it?
It's a classic MTV video from. Actually, I'm not going to say MTV. It was more like a VH1, right? When VH1 actually showed videos. By the way, you want to talk about MTV? I had MTV Classic on the other day. They're showing 80s videos, so maybe these channels are going back to their roots, Nick. I don't know.
Ty, it's just like podcasting, right? There's so many options on cable television, on streaming, on demand, that now I think what's different is almost what people are looking for, right? So, yeah, maybe they're going back to that. Go back to retro and put a twist on it because I miss the visual aspect of videos.
Yeah, and of course, especially 1980s videos, that entire decade had an incredible impact on the way movies were made. and the way, society was. Those videos were such a huge impact on everybody from that generation. But it was great, Nick, to have Don Most on the show, and such a humble, nice guy, considering he had maybe the most popular show on TV for 9 years. Funny too.
And that's the thing. He was so damn funny, and I think he's really he's interesting to listen to, and a really hell of a nice guy. Extremely humble, but very serious.
Very passionate about his new music. Yeah, very passionate. And of course,
I'm getting the CD.
From what I understand, and I am too, and from what I understand, of course, he's loved these standards since the time he was like 15 years old, as he mentioned.
His hit song wasn't, and they call it Puppy Love.
No. I think that's
Anson
Williams. Yeah, I think if you go back, Nick, if you go back to the episode where we had Anson Williams promoting his Singing to a Bulldog book here on Beats and Eats, I tell a story about I actually had to sing a song while I was playing Potsy in a school play.
That's right. I do remember that. I remember that story.
Yeah, it was Put Your Head on My Shoulder. And I'm glad cell phone video or smartphone video didn't exist at that time. It's dead and buried.
Thank God. And you know what's really funny, Ty? During my, I know we're getting off track here, but during my childhood, there were cameras got really out of fashion in the 90s. It was unfashionable to have. Remember, they had the disposable cameras. To have a camera was kind of unfashionable.
Yes.
That lasted really until cell phone cameras got so good. So my whole adolescence, teen years, because in the 80s everybody still took pictures. My teen years in the 90s, there's no pictures of it.
Nowhere.
But now everybody takes pictures of everything. So the cell phone, I think, and social media really brought taking pictures back. It brought it back.
Made it very fashionable. Maybe the Kardashians did that, right?
and you know what?
They're everywhere.
Made a lot of people embarrassed too, because of you just said, if we were kids. When you were a kid, if there was cell phone cameras, then there'd be evidence of that silliness that you did.
Oh my God, you'd see me in plaid pants and plaid shirts that didn't match, brown polyester with high heel shoes on. No.
Platform shoes.
Yes, absolutely. So no, we don't want any of that evidence laying around. And Nick, before we go, let's give out our Twitter handles.
Yeah, I'm at CLNS_Nick.
And I'm at Coog88.
And it's still tricky, Ty.
It's Beat, the letter, and Eats. And Nick, with that, Scott Mitchell's closing the lounge.
Yeah, we're out of here.
It ain't necessarily so. No, it ain't necessarily so. They tell all your children the devil, he's a villain. Ain't necessarily so.
The virtual lounge is now closed. You can stay, you just can't stay here. For Beats and Eats, I'm your bartender, Scott Mitchell. Until next week, hey, stay cool.